A UN damage assessment estimated that clearing over 50 million tons of rubble in Gaza could take 21 years and cost up to $1.2 billion. Well, Mark Jarzombek is an architectural history professor at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, and he says the reconstruction effort will create more displacement for the Palestinians.
It's going to be an extremely complicated and long task. One will have to send in engineers to assess the situation, and that's going to take time too, because you have to assemble the engineering staff and the necessary equipment to just make these various assessments. Unlike after World War II in Europe and in England, where the bomb damage resulted in piles of brick and wooden timbers that could be relatively easily removed by the locals. They would get together and do this, on the back of a pickup truck or wheelbarrows. These are buildings in reinforced concrete. The locals are not going to be able to just sort of, get the task with a sledgehammer and bring these ruins to heal in some reasonable way.
I would presume then the people who are returning to Gaza would then have to be removed again to ensure that the rubble is cleared and that the rebuilding process starts. We're talking about further displacement here, aren't we?
We're talking about decades, that's right, and it's going to be like a checkerboard is maybe the way to think about it. They're here, and then they're going to have to go here, and these people are going to have to go here, and then that gets built, and then they're going to go there. And as you see from the pictures that you showed, people are already squatting in tents and making do in the ruins. And those people are going to have to be told that you can't do that. You're going to have to move over here, and we're going to build some temporary housing. And what is a temporary housing going to look like? And who's going to pay for that? And how that's going to be built, is huge question.
Before we get to the funding part of the issue, I want to ask about this estimated 50 million tons of rubble. Where does that then go? Can it be reused in any way?
No, not in any reasonable way. I mean, if it were a demolition that was done under some sort of controlled circumstances, yes, you could probably figure out some way to reuse it. But in these cases, no. It has to be put onto dump trucks, lifted, by cranes, and the dump trucks have to travel to some site. That site is not going to be in Israel, that's for sure, right? So that's going to have to go through the checkpoints, maybe to Egypt. But if you have hundreds of these dump trucks filled with this stuff heading to Egypt and coming in the morning out of Egypt into Gaza, that's going to be a bottleneck situation on the control points. 500 trucks go into Gaza, used to go in Gaza every day just carrying food and supplies. So on top of those 500 trucks that will now be doing that, you're going to have hundreds of these dump trucks. And the roads need to be improved, enlarged, so that they can come and go. And then you're going to dump it into the sea, you can dump it into the desert. Who knows?
It does sound like decades of work. Now, US President Donald Trump had suggested clearing the Gaza territory and that Arab nations perhaps take in displaced Gazans. Obviously, Gazans don't want to leave their homes in a place that they are familiar with. I wonder who would fund the rebuilding process, and would that be more of the Arab nations, or would that be more of the UN in terms of responsibility?
Well, we'll find out. I mean, certainly the UN will organize sort of funding campaigns, and it'll be mostly, I presume, from what I hear, funded by Arab nations, because they will want, to take control of the situation. But the question is, we're not dealing with a nation state. If we look at the rebuilding of Iraq, after the US-led invasion ended in 2003, it was estimated that Iraq needed $50 billion to rebuild. And that was probably a low estimate. And America, the US, put in $20 billion, and allies put in some as well. And that was, a long time ago. And there's a lot of debate as to how effective all of that money was. In Gaza, there's no national institutions, no national banks, and so forth. So all of the financial infrastructure has to get made in order for there to be some accountability.
We tend to forget, too, that the Gaza Strip is home to 8 refugee camps. Do you think these camps will be part of the reconstruction process?
Reconstruction is a pretty dull instrument. It has to happen fast. And so there's not going to be a lot of what we might call contextual sensibility to these things, right? It'll be fast and cheap. And so these housing blocks will get built and these apartment blocks will get built according to some well-established guidelines that have nothing to do with the Gaza and may have even nothing to do with desert conditions. So whatever is going to happen in the rebuilding is not going to look like Gaza of old.